Hey, everybody. Are you here? I'm trying to put myself in the front. Can everyone hear me so far? Because I can't hear myself, which is super strange. And if someone could make a noise so I can see if I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Hi.
Okay, super. Hi, everybody. I think we're not quite all here, but I will go ahead and get started for now. Enjoying this. You see, this is great. Doubling. I went with real life because I'm starting to get almost a little bit sad about the time of added backgrounds, but maybe we'll go back to it. So I'm Rachael Rakes, and this is Essay Events. Starting off as we do with the description, and then we'll get into introductions. Expanding from concepts like essay film and visual essay. This seminar examines time-based artistic practices and processes that build arguments through images, sound, duration, liveness, and spatial relations. With presentations by artists and scholars working in film and video, performance, sound, and multidisciplinary methodologies. Individual sessions demonstrate how arguments coalesce in visual, aural, or putatively abstract forms. Moderated by me, these sessions on one hand reveal the roots of essay aesthetics in a cognitive, cooperative, and sensory experience, and on the other hand, consider a variety of approaches to the development of nonlinear concepts. As our guests present and discuss individual works, we can now produce new loose schematics and methods for building ideas through durational events and imagine different forms for the pacing and structuring of visual politics. So beginning kind of as usual with introductions, I want to ask everyone to please introduce yourselves, maybe also tell me your present location, or tell us maybe recent locations you've been before this all, name, pronunciations, and pronouns, what you're working on, what you're interested in, what brings you to the class, or perhaps what other New Center classes you've taken. And lastly, if you can, maybe name for me one recent essay or text and one film, performance, or sound-based work that you recently deeply appreciated. I'll then take all of these down and put them together into like a referential bibliography to share with the class. So starting with me, I'm a curator, arts writer, and editor, a film programmer and educator. I'm currently working as my day job as a curator of public practice at BAK, Basis voor Actuele Kunst in Utrecht. At the moment, we're close to the public, and so I'm working right now primarily on how to organize when you can't mobilize. So pivoting kind of various institutional resources towards supporting the artists and activists and different community members we were already working with in different ways, and trying to develop new platforms that do something other than kind of just throw our content online, but find kind of short-term and long-term solutions for working in the way that we previously worked. So that's kind of in process. The other thing that I am working on these days is a long-term independent project with the artist Laura Huertas-Munan, which is called Counter Encounters. The project looks at the aesthetics and power dynamics of visual ethnography and seeks to find ways to render it outside of its modernist and colonial trappings in order to consider more equitable encounters between humans from different geocultural realms, as well as between humans and animals, plants, and other organisms. My text, as a recent text, although it's a text that I just keep reading rather than a recent text I discovered, is on ethnographic refusal by the anthropologist Audra Simpson. It deals with the impossibility of defining indigeneity because of the fact that indigeneity, as it's defined, comes from that it is a colonial construct. And what I like especially about the essay is that it just starts right out the gate going super hard with all of the things that kind of need to be dismantled even to begin to redefine what indigeneity can be. So it starts out strong and just kind of continues the whole way in this 3,000 word text. A recent sound piece that I keep going back to is Janet Cardiff's The 40-Part Motet from 2001, which records 40 voices separately and then presents them in a room as a speaker choir in 40 channels. And it's just deeply moving. So from there, we can start. I'll just go in order of who's close to me on the screen, and that's Yusi.
Oh, hi. Sorry, my camera is not very good. I am Yusi and I'm in Beijing, so it's about 12 in the midnight here. And I live in the US and I study there. I'm doing my master's in archaeology, and I study the conjunction between archaeology and contemporary art. With Greek archaeology, to be more specific, and I'm interested in how the ancient artifacts and materials are being utilized in contemporary politics and art. Recent movies. I just watched Vulture Defense Sarajevo. I think that's pretty interesting. It's a pretty old film. Yeah. Oh, and I use she, her. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Joy? You're muted. Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
My name is Joy. I'm from Nairobi. I'm a writer. I think around sound, film, and maybe poetry. The last thing that I watched, it's a film called Brazil in 1985, which is I don't know, set in a retro future world. Yeah, it has like a young Robert De Niro.
A recent text that you liked or that you are moved by?
Text, yeah. I don't know. One of the last texts that I read, it was on the new book by Frank with a person on Afro-pessimism.
Willerson, yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I've been checking around. Yeah.
Thanks. Ines?
Hi, my name is Ines. I go by she, her, and I am in Oslo, Norway. Before that, I was in London, where I'm at Goldsmiths University, where I'm finishing my MA in Contemporary Art Theory this year. I am a dancer and choreographer, and I was drawn to this seminar because I'm doing my my dissertation research on possibilities for the essay form in choreographic work. And a recent text I read was a text called Letting Your Speech Go by a dancer choreographer called Juliet Mapp. And a recent piece I saw was Music for Lectures or Every Word Was Once an Animal by Mette Edvardsen and Jonathan Burrows.
James. Yeah, James, Elsie, I can't hear you. I don't know if anyone else can.
Hello?
Yes.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm James. I'm currently in London. My pronouns are he and him. I studied Goldsmiths on the MA Contemporary Art program as well, but I did it last year. And I guess at the moment I'm working on a few things. I was supposed to be doing a residency in Lisbon until coronavirus stopped it. But I was going to do something where I was going to adapt a text I wrote, a theory fiction text, into like an essay, like video essay thing. So I was interested in doing this at the same time. And but now I guess like doing the seminar beforehand, if I can do it in the future, sort of be equipped for it. Yeah, I'm kind of working on a project at the moment about doomsday and social methods of care, which I notice Andrew is part of. So we're meeting on Zoom doing that. Yeah, things I've read and watched lately. I'm trying to think of like some interesting ones to share, but all that's coming into my head are like, I watched this film the other night, which was like a Billy Wilder film, and it's called 1, 2, 3, and it was kind of quite like a Cold War comedy film, like films when they were building the Berlin Wall, and it was really meta in a way that I felt like was quite like surprising for something that was filmed at the time of it all. And text I've read, I've been trying to find the author, but I was reading this text about social reproduction theory this morning. I can't find the author, but maybe if you come back to me at the end, I can tell you the author, but it's really good.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Panos.
Video work of host is Womb Life by Tamara Henderson. I really appreciate it. And a recent text that I've read that I was really touched by was Matters of Care, Speculative Ethics in More Than Human Words, words by Maria Puig de la Bellacasa, if I pronounced that right. Yes.
I think you were cut off at the beginning. If you can just say where you're from, what you're doing real quick.
I'm Panos Giannikopoulos and I'm based in Athens. I'm a curator. And I don't know, I've studied history and archaeology, and then I did my master's in social sciences, anthropology, and gender.
Okay, thanks. Olivia.
Hi, my name is Olivia. I go by she, her. I'm living in California right now, in LA, so it's 8 a.m. here. I am currently getting my MFA in studio art, and I work in video and sculpture. And I'm teaching a class on intro to video right now to undergrads, which is interesting. A film or a video that I recently rewatched, Alan Sekula, Forgotten Space. And yeah, I was also just reading Necropolitics, Gilliam and Venbe. Yeah.
Is teaching still on?
Yeah, teaching's still on. We're doing it via Zoom. Yeah.
What did I miss? Andrew.
So I'm in London. My background is in architecture. I just graduated from studying that last year. Currently trying to move more into the research-based art practice. Primarily been interested in logistics and labor related to logistics. And something I've been looking at recently, I think it's like a half-finished documentary by a guy called, it's just on YouTube, by this guy called G Jin, and it's about gold farmers. That's the name of it, and that's it's called Gold Farmers MOV1, in fact. And it's about like Chinese workers who mine in-game currency on World of Warcraft. Yeah, so I find it quite interesting. And the text, I've been reading some essays by a writer called Margarita Mendez, and there was one called Molecular Colonialism, which I found quite intriguing. And he and him.
Hi.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Romulo. I'm from Brazil. I use he, him, and I'm doing my master's currently in media theory at Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. I'm also a writer and a sound artist. Texts and art pieces. I was reading this week Hans-Ulrich Gombrech's Atmosphere, Ambience and Stimmen. Really interesting text. And recent piece of artwork, I think the Caretaker last album called Everywhere an Empty Bliss, which he takes like old songs and repurposes them. And it's very eerie and macabre. That's about it.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Sebastian?
Hey, I'm Sebastian. I go by he, him. I'm currently in Frankfurt in Germany, and I'm completing my master's degree in critical and curatorial studies. I guess I was attracted to this seminar because I'm interested in film as some sort of a form of theoretical production, and also how this ephemerality can never escape its underlying materiality in a way, how it's always entangled also with something material. And the last thing I was reading that I thought was very relevant to our current moment maybe was a book called Contract and Contagion by Angela Mitropoulos, which is some sort of a historical overview of risk management and contingency through lens of analysis of contracts. And the last thing I saw was nothing too highly sophisticated, but it was Body Double by Brian De Palma, which is like an homage to Hitchcock.
You're muted.
Rachel, you're muted. Unmute yourself, please.
I see. Martina.
Hi. First of all, sorry, I'm not on video. I'm having some pretty intense eye issues. So I'm currently standing in a dark room with sunglasses on, which is pretty weird, but will do my best to participate. I'm also London-based. I'm also completing an MA in Contemporary Art Theory at Goldsmiths University. The seminar piqued my interest because I'm very interested in temporality and in time-based art, particularly in sound and performance and how they unfold contemporarity. A recent piece of work that I really enjoyed would be Rubber Coated Steel by Lawrence Abondon, as it touches upon a few things that I'm particularly interested in terms of sound, Middle East, conflict, and how they're intertwined. And a piece of text, although not very recent at all, but that I have been rereading recently is Frantz Fanon's Parallel Hands, in the way that it portrays and unleashes the depiction of a singularity, which I thought was really interesting and quite fitting to the current moment.
Thank you. Saida?
Hello, let me first turn off my background because it's, sorry. I'm art history PhD candidate in University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I live in the US. And my dissertation topic lies in Middle Eastern contemporary art, but since I changed my dissertation topic like in a couple of weeks ago, so I prefer to not talk about it right now. Yeah, it's always gives me it gives me stress to talk about it. But so the reason that I took this class is because there is an issue in visual culture studies that I also do a minor in. And there is an issue called invisibility or unrepresentability of the phenomenon. For example, labor, capital, what is that? Anthropocene, global warming, etc., etc. And I'm interested in proposing, inventing some sort of like schemes, diagrams, or like images, whatsoever, as a counter aesthetic tactic in order to be able to like imagine them. And I wrote an essay on representability of labor, in which I proposed like a physical diagram about time. And when I was writing it, I was thinking that I think I should develop some more skills in order to like fully communicate my ideas like visually and not like textually. So that was the reason that I took this class, and I'm so glad. And now I'm reading this book called Real Time plus Art plus Theory plus Practice plus History. It's about some time-based arts and how they work with temporality or like a real temporality in their works. And that's it.
Sasha?
Hi, I'm Sasha. I go by she, her, and I'm currently in Moscow in Russia. And I finished my MA in contemporary theory at Goldsmiths, and then I moved back home.
The last thing I read was an article by Michelle Murphy called Distributed Reproduction, which it was basically doing the work of connecting social reproduction and infrastructures, which I myself have been interested in for a while, and I, sorry to both, but wrote a small article on this to the News Center platform. And so, yeah, the thing that I watched recently was a video, Algorithmic City by Tekla Slanishvili. And Tekla is a Georgian artist, but she lives in, she lives between Tbilisi and Berlin. And so the film is basically about the way visions of the futures produced by the Georgian government were implemented in reality. And so, yeah, what else? Well, but I watched it a couple of some time ago, because really literally like yesterday, me and a colleague of mine, Anna Engelhardt, we finished a project on Crimean Tatars, who are indigenous people of Crimea, and we looked at them from the perspective of infrastructure, and both this material infrastructures and like more metaphorical and discursive one. But unfortunately, like for now, it was important for us to present it first in Russian and then translate it into English. So yeah, and I was supposed to start my PhD at Ruhr University at Bochum, under supervision of Henrietta Gunkel, but yes, I'm, but like, yeah, and I'm currently polishing my like PhD topic, and yeah, I'm thinking about it for now. So yeah, I suppose that's it, and I'm really excited for the course, and really happy to meet everyone.
Okay, see Antonio. I can't. Okay, there we go.
Sorry, I was trying to click and it was appearing again. I'm José Antonio. I'm Brazilian. I'm from the south of Brazil, from a town called Pelotas. I'm currently finishing my PhD in legal theory at Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro. And it's about connecting like traditional concepts of legal theory to contemporary problems related to technology. So like trying to adapt legal theory to thinking about contemporary technology. And the last text that I was reading was Marilyn Satchin's article, No Nature, No Culture, the Hagen case. I'm in the middle of it now. And I just watched Miyazaki's Ponyo.
What was
I think it's Ponyo, the Miyazaki cartoon.
I think that's everyone who's here. Very quickly, I want to go back to UC. My internet cut out when you gave what you were reading and watching, or reading and taking in for art. UC?
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so you said about the film and then the text?
Film or sound or another kind of time-based artwork performance and a text. My internet cut out when you were for part of your bio.
I actually recently was in quarantine for a while, so I didn't watch or read too much. But I rewatched Walter Defense Sarajevo, the Yugoslavo film that was played on TV a couple of days ago, and I really I find that pretty fitting in terms of the current situation. And then I for text. I was reading Derrida's Archive Fever recently for my studies, rereading it, and then I also read some poetry in Chinese.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I? Oh, Alejandra. Did I miss you? Okay.
I'm sorry, I was in the in the audit version of this. So, well, I'm Alejandra. I'm a visual artist. I'm currently live in Mexico City, but now the COVID takes me in my parents' house. So now I'm living here since like 10 years ago for this quarantine. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that because I realized that my parents are really cool actually. And yeah, I was interested in this course because I'm also working in an educational contemporary art program. It's an independent program in Veracruz, that is a city in the south of Mexico. Yeah, so now and it's focused in performance art and mostly processes, no? So that's why I'm also in this center because I like to not just be focused in this specific area of the world, not just trying to connect with other practices and yeah, and in a political way also. The last thing I read is a book of Selva Almada. Yeah, is this one? Yeah, it's in Spanish, but the name is it's a literature book, and it's a different short stories about little towns in the north of Argentina. And the last film I saw, it's Tropical Malady, the Pichapong, from a Pichapong. And I never saw this film before, but a lot of friends recommended that to me, and I really like it because it's an exploration of darkness, but it's not a darkness in a occidental way of seeing. It's more like a more complex way to see the darkness, and it's connected to the nature and the society. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. I just have a couple people in audit mode still, so I need to bring them over. We're a big class. So I'm waiting for Daniel. Let's see if I do that. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hi, yeah, sorry, I'm gonna do it quick. So I'm Daniel. I'm based in Berlin. I'm good friends with Mo, so that's why I know the new center. Mohammad Salemi. I was part of one of the earlier courses called Architecture After the Internet. And I really liked it. So I think that's kind of also why I'm here again. And I'm super interested in temporality and so on and so forth based on my personal art practice. I'm studying fine arts here in Berlin. And yeah, I think, yeah, lots of my works have like an element of constant change, or like some material might be melting or something is inflating or whatsoever. So therefore, I think this class kind of could really help me. And yeah, also forces me to read a bunch of really interesting texts, which I need to motivation. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. What I'm reading right now, I'm reading duty-free art from Hito. I think everybody knows that. Yeah, I still haven't really read all of it, so I'm doing that now in quarantine. Sound and music, it's a short video, or like short film / music video, I would say. It's like by Julie. It's called Zombies. You can find it on YouTube. I think it's really interesting based on like costume design and where it's set. It's shot in the capital of Congo, and yeah, also music-wise, it's interesting how this overlaps with new media and old traditional whatever. Like, yeah, just give it a look. And I just recently watched a movie called Happy as Lazaro, which is was kind of an interesting experience, even though I'm personally not very religious or not religious at all, but it's still a really interesting movie. I think it's by Alice Rohrwacher or something.
Rohrwacher, yeah.
Yeah, Rohrwacher, exactly. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, I think.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all introed now. So I want to expand on the intro to this course a bit before we get into the readings, and also go through, because I think it's sort of essential to the introduction, to go through a little bit more about the speakers that we'll have. So to pivot back to the kind of structure and ideas behind the course, I guess first of all, I'll say that it will be by design more exploratory than didactic. The idea for the course came to me from Mo and the organizers. The idea was to design a course around the essay film. And I was thinking that rather than think about this sort of binary of this series of films that we kind of know what they are, putting them up against the idea of an essay, and kind of deconstructing this one thing, I thought I would try to, first of all, like trouble the comparison, like the language comparison to the essay itself, and think about why an essay is a defined thing, when maybe these things aren't, but somehow need the modifier of essay to explain themselves. And I wanted to think about, what is it that an essay does that we find useful and can maybe be useful in terms of describing, maybe finding new languages to describe more research-based or argumentative time-based art. So I've been looking into, sort of different people who've tried to grapple with the idea of the essay itself. One definition I kind of liked comes from Claire de Obalida. She's a scholar who wrote a book called The Essayistic Spirit in 1996. And she defines an essay as positioned on the border field of literature and science philosophy, meandering from the intellectual and artistic to the experiential in a free manner. I like that kind of everything that I've found on the essay, insists on this kind of hybridity, not just in its sort of textual form, but in its resources. And I think that hybridity then makes something additionally like the essay film even harder to define, right? So it's referring to an unstable thing in the first place. So this kind of poverty of language for the essay itself, or other than thinking of it as a heterogeneous thing, makes it kind of doubly undefinable when we're trying to define an audiovisual piece. So, you know, the fact that we are reaching to literary references because of a dearth of visual ones, we end up sort of connoting to, or sort of gesturing to things like a visual poem, or, you know, these kinds of like, yeah, like poetic language, or yeah, essay or essayistic form. And so I kind of want to think, not necessarily to build new terms, but to kind of allow for new languages to understand these works on their own terms and what they're doing, but still kind of use the essay as an unstable sort of block to push against, because there are some sort of, there are some understood things about what it produces, right? I want to mention Adorno briefly, because I feel like I have to. I'm curious how many of you have looked at some point the essayist form, or any of you? Just, yeah. 1, 2, yeah, 2 and something maybe. I was thinking about grappling with it here. I might put it at the end for the last seminar, but I also, yeah, I think I'm going to decide, depending on how things unfold over the next weeks, whether to. I think there are some good things there, but it ends up being an object of its own. But I wanted to pull out one quote that I think is great and can carry through nicely through the next seminars. And that is, nothing can be interpreted out of something that is not interpreted to it at the same time. So I'll say that again for those of you who haven't read it. Nothing can be interpreted out of something that is not interpreted into it at the same time. Then he goes from there to kind of discuss more, to connect the essay to the autonomous art object, and that's where it becomes a bit more problematic for me in terms of the problem that he discusses with art and polemic, that maybe isn't a problem that I personally, maybe you see as something that we really need to deal with right now. That's all I'll say about that. But if anyone wants to chime in on their feelings on the Adorno essay, then let me know. So it's just to say, I'm kind of trying to hold here that there's something useful in the idea of setting up an argument, building an argument through a series of clear blocks, whether in linear form or nonlinear form. So I was thinking about, if we break down the essay in its text form, we're building an argument through, at its most bare, a set of linear evidences, or at most simple, a set of linear evidences. Beyond that, we can add humor, surprise, narrative buildup, pacing, transitions, cyclical points from past and present, and elements like facts, philosophy, observation, comparison, and pleas to emotion. So in the course, I want to explore how time-based practices utilize all of the elements they have at hand to do something similar, right? So to build arguments through time and space and through sound and experience. For me, the most exciting, I guess, textual essays are those that come to their point in an unexpected way, usually leading to like a kind of synaptic burst of understanding. Often with artworks, that burst might come along differently, especially more rigorous, difficult, nonlinear works. There's this element of physical or experiential understanding that is often hard to put into words. You know, after we read an essay that grabs us, it's usually not too hard to trace what it did, even if we don't exactly know how it did that. We can kind of find the particular points, the moment that things built up into some kind of, you know, some kind of exciting mini conclusion, or that things came together, and understand that, like, the kind of tension before it, right? With audio, performance, and moving image, it's more often that the process, even if we do have experience with these things, it can be kind of more mysterious to comprehend or to articulate, right, to put into words. the feeling of going to see a performance or watch a film and not being able to speak about it for some time, right? Or identify what is the thing, and not have that like process of breakdown. So I want to think about those kinds of elements, and not in like a completely deconstructive textual reading way for time-based media, but to kind of begin like an ongoing investigation into like finding a bit more of these things. So kind of mixing a textual reading with a sound-based reading, with a moving image reading on their own terms, on their own material terms and experiential terms, if that makes sense. And so that was the idea behind mixing different practices. Several of the practitioners that we've invited go between different practices, but many of them have a sort of a primary field. So I just wanted to go through to give you an idea, and at the end of this day, we will each will do the signups for who will present on what days, but for now, just to kind of give you a little bit more about who we're bringing in, because I think that gives a little bit more shape to the course itself. Any questions or anything at the moment? So next week, we have a New York-based artist named Neda Yerushalmi. She refers to herself as a dance artist, but who works across genres and disciplines. Her work, the idea behind her work is to engage with the audiences by imparting sensation of things as they are perceived, rather than as they are known, and to challenge how meaning is attributed and constructed. So she'll be presenting her multi-part performance project through video and lecture called Paramodernities. And I should add that the concept or the specter of modernities comes up frequently in this course. Of course, the essay itself is very much a modern construct. And so I think it's another reason to kind of push back against that as well. I think a lot of the artists are in this course are thinking about what to take and what to keep and what to not keep from modernity, and really, questioning those sort of fundamental elements of that, right? So we're also using as our primary object something that's very much of a modern object. So just to sort of think about that, and note that it's something that will come up. So her work Paramodernities, which is this multi-part work that she's been finishing over the last years, is a series of lecture performances, dance experiments that deconstruct landmark modern choreographies. They explore foundational tenets of modern discourse, such as sovereignty, race, feminism, and ableism. And then they include these kind of intensive public discussions as inseparable parts of each installment. They tend to be extremely long, so they're this kind of intense durational practice with the audience. Although these will be presented here in bits. Jumana Mana is an artist who works primarily with film and sculpture, although typically quite separately. Her work explores how power is articulated through relationships, often focusing on the body and materiality in relation to narratives of nationalism, history, and histories of place. Jumana is going to focus on recent projects that deal with the paradoxes of the modernist urge to categorize and preserve. This urge often entails an artificial freezing of time that on one hand keeps the record of cultural forms that are perhaps no longer apparent today, but often the roots of which are the erasure of those forms. Louisa Greenfeld follows Jumana. She's a Berlin-based visual artist working with film and text. She's also a part of Labor Berlin, an analog film collective. She will be presenting a lecture on addressing the idea of working with an aesthetics of resistance. the lecture and then semi-screening will explore analog film material combined with live reading through research that touches Benjamin Brecht and the 1972 Straub-Lié film History Lessons. Following Louisa is Ali Sheri, who's an artist originally from Beirut. Ali works in video and visual art and also has a sound practice. Current projects look at the history of ruins and the place of the archaeological object in the construction of historical narratives. His presentation will be called Filming the Uncanny, or How I Raise the Dead. And this will be a presentation of several short works of his looking at the question of the uncanny. Agnieszka Polska has, as some of you may have taken a course with her before, she's been a guest of the New Center other times. She's mostly video artist who employs found materials such as archival photography and illustrations, which she subjects to subtle interventions, whether animating them or working them into existing images. Her seminar is focused on processes of retelling history as nonlinear essays. She uses examples from her own work where single narratives are simultaneously told through multiple screens. So with her, we discuss the methods of spatialization of narrative, as well as the relationship between poetry making and deconstructing histories. Sort of finally is Hassan Khan. He is based in Egypt. He's an artist, musician, and writer. Maybe the most heterogeneous of the artists we'll be presenting. He's always working in different forms. A lot of his works capture field sound and experiences and deal with loops and distortions. And a lot of it is grounded in the city where he lives and works, in Cairo. And for his presentation, we'll be reading a collaborative novella of his and listening to his Infinite Hip Hop song, a couple of other soundtracks, and thinking as a reference about Philip K. Dick's work, Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said. And then at the end will be me again, and I'm gonna decide what we're gonna read as we go so we can be responsive and kind of think about, yeah, as like different kinds of repetitions come up and things that, yeah, what feels like the most maybe interesting responsive things to deal with at the end. And so I will lecture and read with that. Everybody good? Any questions? Okay. So I want to move on to the readings. If people have good enough bandwidth, it would be great to be able to see you. So I know, that you can raise your hand, but so I know that when you're able to participate. So maybe what we'll do is we'll go through one and then take a 5-10 minute break and then go back to the others and then get into the assigning the presentations. So just to say, with the readings of today, I was thinking that for one, I assumed that most of you are specialized in maybe one or two of these kind of these media forms more than another in film, sound, or performance. And so I wanted to offer 3 entries, that delved into each to kind of level things a little bit and offer sort of dictionaries and references to start off with. But I also wanted to think about each of the texts that I introduced to read, kind of tend to explore what are different possibilities that can be done with with certain forms, right? So how to really use or understand sound, what performance can do, sort of kind of playing with what these things can be and how to define them, or how to change the set of definitions by which we would try to define them. So I want to turn first to sound, words, and sonic fictions. And I'm going to pull this up myself too. And for this part, it would be great to just mostly be in discussion, since we've all read. I'll start off with some ideas, but it would be great if you can jump in. You know, especially those who maybe have more of a of a grounding. You can also start things off in either of any of these disciplines. That would be super. But just to start off with a little background on Salome, who's Voelin, I believe is how you pronounce her surname, but I haven't checked. But I think that's right, in case anyone has a correction. So she is an artist and theorist. She's at the University of the Arts London. So maybe some of you have come across her, been to Goldsmiths. A question for Martina, if someone can forward the readings to Martina, maybe can you put, since you weren't on the original list, maybe you can put your email in the chat box, and while we start, someone can send you those. Someone can do that?
Sounds good, thank you.
Thanks. Oh, there are more, okay. There's gonna be, oh, and James also. No! How many people? So how many people? So 1, 2, 3. Just a question: did those of you who didn't get the readings sign up recently, or?
No, I was enrolled for a while, but I didn't receive any emails about the seminar, which is why I had to email you directly today to get a link. So I haven't had any communication so far.
Huh.
I've also received for next week, but I haven't received for this week. And also the drive, the classroom drive didn't show the readings for this week either.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so if someone who has, I can also send the drive link, but some people did get it, yes, or okay.
For me, the drive link that was sent points to week 2 for Netta's session.
Okay. Let me see what's up. Okay, yeah, so the email from, for those of you who are auditing, I'll throw the link in, or in case, yeah. But for those of you who need it, it was in the April 2nd email, which maybe many of you were not signed up yet. And so maybe the second email had the wrong link, perhaps. That is a shame. I'm gonna put it here too. And has everyone been able to access it now? If you look at the one from me, that should be okay, or from Danielle. And can you just wave if you didn't get the reading, if you haven't done the reading or didn't get the reading? So one, Martina, you see, you did?
In what case?
Yeah, I
in
have
what case
received
should
it. Thank you.
we wait? I have, yeah, I got the readings.
Okay, so
I also have it.
super. Okay, okay, okay. So we all at least have it now. In case it, yeah, if it comes up again where the link is wrong or something, feel free to send me an email as well. Okay, so back to it. So going back to Salome Boland's looks at various ways for sound to be theorized, considering the relationship between sound and listening and its theorization, and deals with problems of articulating sound into writing and describing it. As I mentioned, she's been for a long time professor at the University of Arts London, and works on a number of kind of online field sound projects and things like that. And writes extensively on sound theory and often kind of mashups of, she has as I understand it, a full-length study on sound and possible world theory and sound in science fiction and various other things. So I wanted to get into this text. Some things that interest me most about this text are how she sort of struggles with the need to describe sound and also a desire to kind of destroy language itself. And so one term that often comes up in the text is form or formlessness. In the very first sentence, she refers to sound as something that is formless. To write about sound and sound art is to write about the formless, the provocative, that which invisibly does what we think we see, but struggles to find a place in articulation, while what we think we see slides effortlessly into language in the certain shape of a noun. And she goes from there to, especially talking about Kojo Eshon's More Brilliant Than the Sun, which is maybe some of you have found. It's an amazing text that has been out of print for far too long. But she goes back to form with him again, thinking kind of also on this idea of sound, of trying to verbalize sound as a way of destroying language form, I guess you would say. So on page 2, starting up, his reconsideration of the past from the future allows him to abandon the given, the category, what has already been said and evaluated. Instead, he produces dense narrations from sounds and rhythms that bring unprecedented valuations, demand neologisms, and trigger a physical engagement. His Black science fiction performs a breakbeat science of musical works, producing a polemic that does not inspire to good form, taste, and value, that does not try to order the work within given categories, but seeks to follow its own formless and continuous form. And then finally, assumes permission to talk beyond the esoteric knowledge of the discipline and invents new vocabularies for sound that do not exclude, but embrace Black sonic expressions and place them at the center of a universe of articulation to which they normatively remain marginal, overheard, subaudible, and unspoken. It's a recentering that is language, that is a strategy of criticism and a practice of writing that does not end in a re-essentialization and recanonization, instead generates a physics of physicality when language falls away and fails happily. And that's on page 3. I wanted to, I guess, start off by talking a little bit about this idea of form and the resistance of form, especially in terms of she's kind of mixing feminist and Black / Afrofuturist critique in looking at those, looking through those lenses to think about sound as something other, but then also thinking about sound as something formless. And I was kind of struck by the use formlessness when we're talking about something that we're trying to form. So I was just curious if anyone had any thoughts about this sort of beginning part and these kinds of definitions, or if it reminded you of anything else.
Hey, I kind of had a maybe I missed something when she was writing, but like in her mixing of Black thought and of feminist thought, I kind of found it a bit weird because she doesn't really talk about this, you know, this Black body, which seems especially important for coalesce. And she also mentions Thomas Gardner, who is also like a Black writer, and for him the experience of a Black body is like it's really like a forming experience. Mm-hmm. So, but at the same time, she writes about it alongside Sixon. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. So I kind of had my doubts about the way she built this argument, and I was wondering if anybody else had similar doubts. And also I had my doubts about formless and her like approach to formless, because although she does center this speaking about formless, she does like center body in there. Mm-hmm. She like oh sorry she kind of like when she speaks about the Black body, she doesn't really speak about like the feeling of like disorientation, which kind of formless invites. And maybe I'm reading into it, but I was wondering if anybody had similar thoughts, I suppose. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You froze for me at the beginning, but I'm going to extrapolate that you were kind of talking about the like maybe a difficulty with a quick kind of easy merging of the feminist sort of this like feminist or feminine critique with Kodro's use of thinking about sound as kind of white, and maybe that being too easy. Yeah, was that the beginning of?
Yeah, it's kind of I kind of had a feeling that she does that too. She overlooks some things that are important to Reproduction thinking and to Thomas Gardner thinking. Mm-hmm. It kind of feels it was, but maybe it's okay. Maybe it's like maybe I'm like putting too much. I don't know. Maybe it's too much of identity politics. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of curious and confused around this, I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a lot to handle in one text. To start off with referring to, she starts talking about Brandon LaBelle and Daniela Castella And as, oh yeah, so Douglas Kahn and Alan Light, in search for a language, this is on page 1, being in search of a language that manages to access its ephemeral, sounds ephemeral and invisible materiality, again, invisible, which I sort of keep wanting to question, this idea of formlessness and invisibility. It doesn't seem to do it enough justice. And to evaluate its experience autonomously of the conventions of visual arts criticism or musical discourses. So these people, thinking of these people as something like canon, even if they're attempting not to be, and then immediately kind of turning from that and looking at alternatives. And I guess my, not necessarily in defense, but thinking about what she's doing here within the context of an essay in an anthology, is trying to very quickly provide kind of an argument, counter argument, or an argument, other side thing to, or altern, let's say, considerations of sound philosophy or sound theory, because sound theory historically has been super white, right? And so, yeah, for me, this text, like the reason that it was important to start here was because she, just to start at the beginning of like what we're kind of pushing against and start thinking with that, even if it's a bit troubling and kind of quick transitional, like it doesn't answer anything, of course.
Rachel, could you perhaps elaborate a bit on what your exact maybe issue with this concept of formlessness was? Because I thought that she somehow, maybe this is not her intention, but the way it comes across is sometimes very much equating sound with some inherent disruption. So sound is something that resists domestication and resists some sort of coherent signification. So I wondered if, I don't know if this is her aim, but sometimes it really seemed like that sound equals this, as in like it's in a very homogeneous entity that is inherently disruptive. So I had some problems with that, and I thought it was a bit, maybe a bit too, reductive in that manner.
Yeah, I think maybe the confusion or the comparison of formlessness to fragmentation, or formlessness and the idea of the uncontrollable. Like, I think for me, form is not problematic. Like these things, even if they involve elements of the uncontrollable or the uncontrolled, even if they come forth non-linearly or in fragmented ways, those are all forms, and I would rather kind of defend them as such. And so I think that's where, for me, it's a bit loose, and to think the use of formless, and then I don't think it gets around. It doesn't for me evade. Well, first of all, it doesn't do any justice to the fact that there's still like sound still wants to have a theory, to have ways to understand it, whether that's through kind of textual theory or not. And then the idea of invisibility is sort of odd for me too, because I think it makes it sound unknowable, and I think that's quite beside the point. Or maybe that makes sound more fugitive or more outside of things than perhaps it is. And maybe this is a defense of the fact that it's a lesser explored or lesser theorized of the arts at the moment, or at least in like popular artistic discourse. But do other people have thoughts on it?
Yeah. Hey. I was kind of thinking about the way that neologisms relate to essay, like this sort of medium that we're looking at over the course of this course. And like, it's kind of interesting to me how like the difference between like a purely textual essay and like this kind of artistic, like multimedia essay is that like when we have a purely textual essay, it's like everything has to be formalized into a language, and so we have this role of like neologisms, for the purpose of like being able to newly articulate what was previously inarticulatable. And so I'm trying to think back to like when I read like More Brilliant Than the Sun, which was quite a long time ago, but like he invents like so many different words to describe like what was at the time like, emerging genre, like loads of emerging genres of dance music. And to write in a purely book form, like these words need to be created. But what I was kind of thinking is that like if you are operating outside the pure confines of language in like you know, an accompanying sound or video as well, there are like the formlessness that like is lent to what you're trying to express in a way that like is not restricted by language. So like, I don't know, is neologism as important, or you know, language becomes like an equal player in like different modes of expression?
Yeah, like takes a sort of step down, or what, I mean, and then what language are we also talking about, right? Whether it's neologisms or the languages that we agree to speak in, right? And so, you know, that the domination of that, no matter what. I'm curious what people have to say about the sort of the neologism thing in general as a tendency in art and politics. I understand it and get it, and a lot of like scholars and theorists I respect use them, but the fact that they tend to end up being kind of rarefied things that are often sort of forgotten after some years means that I don't know what we're producing new language for, or what, if the language isn't adopted into some kind of, you know, not common parlance, but at least parlance of the people that you're speaking with or trying to work through these ideas with, then I'm not sure what it's there for. I guess I feel like something, you know, like the ideas of Escher's work is to change the language that we use and the terms on which that language is used. And so I always wonder about this idea of just adding more and more to the lexicon. I think it's useful because we don't have enough, and at the same time, it's hard to understand the dissemination or the distribution. Is anyone else getting else on that, or do I want to go forward? Okay, I want to move on to maybe a little bit about the examples of Rie Nakajima. And I was thinking a little about, because of reading this work and thinking about reading the work without having seen or heard the work. And I don't know if people had already had the work in mind or were trying to like understand the work just through text. But I thought that would be like the way that for me, trying to grapple with how to explain this quite simple thing, but to explain what it kind of does was interesting. So I thought I would just show a quick clip from one of her performances. Let me go from there. I did something stupid, and that's that I can't find the page of this to turn off the sound. Hold on a second. Sorry, we're back. That I just wanted to show a short clip of that, but then I forgot to cut off the screen, and I couldn't find it. I wanted to bring her up because she's using the text as an example to think about how sound can destabilize the signifier, right? So you have all of these objects that are doing something different, right? They're sort of like imagined differently. And so I was curious if people who, maybe those of you who especially have worked a lot with language and studying sort of language uses and structuralism and things like that, how you read or responded to this idea of using this alternate use, let's say, of these objects in this sort of orchestral way, if you kind of buy it or. I'll read from a piece for the moment. So her sonic things are starting up Eshen's subjectivity engine, propelling us into the intensity of an invisible experience, because she goes back and forth from doing these presentations in person with the objects themselves or playing them as sound pieces, right? Propelling us into the intensity of an invisible experience that abandons our hold on things, their substance, and instead we hover between the audible and subaudible and the inaudible, that side of the object that is never visible and cannot be deduced in a mathematical calculation, but needs to be generated from what is not yet known and requires neologisms, errors, and the wrong words to find a name. And then descriptive language underpins our idea of the real as a notion of actuality, which is crucially not the same as lived reality, but the construction of reality as a logical and shared state of affairs. Actuality answers the demands of logic and language to be real in the sense of being truthful, consistent, non-contradictory. Reality involves the contingent experience that might well at times lie, be inconsistent and contradict itself. A sonic language accommodates those inconsistencies and contradictions. It does not rely on description, but invents new names and rhythms that admit and grant access to the possibility of the heard. So it's kind of a doubling back on the idea of, I think, of the formlessness and thinking, and it's more of an invention of the new, as maybe as sort of James was suggesting, that it's bringing up its own kinds of forms. And I wanted to read this text for the purpose of maybe thinking about what those new forms could be, whether we agree with the sort of terms by which they're necessarily introduced here. Anything else? Responses on that?
I had just, I mean, it's a little bit off, but and call me naive, but I can't really understand how much this is about the impossibility of language in terms of grasping at these things versus how much it is a matter of the difficulty and yet necessity of that search, like language. Because it strikes me somehow as funny that there's like talking about replacing the noun with the predicate, or into talking about the verb, but at the same time talking about trying to move away from language.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, I think it could in that sense go further, and that we're discussing the terms by which this language is used, or that we could be discussing the terms by which this language is used rather than slightly altering definitions, or reordering it, but kind of taking yet another step back and using forms that prioritize non-lingual elements such as sound and movement and image to do that, to sort of alter these terms. So we will move on because we're moving through quickly, but I will offer this short break and then we will go to acts of transfer after that. So let's come back in at 40 after. Is that good for everyone? Okay, see you in a bit.
What are you doing? You're supposed to be There's a 5-minute break. Oh, okay. What are you doing? Why? Because it really is our turn. Okay. Yeah, but it's you said it correctly. Our turn. Yeah, but you're like I just think like okay. I feel like cleaning hair is good. Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I like it. Yeah. Yeah, I think no one has ever cleaned that before. I'm kidding, but that's I think it's very rare. Someone clean all the time. Yeah. Is it going good? Like it? Why? Oh, it's good. The first, the first session is just a lot of introduction stuff, so it's hard to say yet, but I think it's good. Yeah. Yours was like, yeah, this is huh? So this is yours for it. So you're like, no. Also, I like a lot of the artists they invited. So, for example, like next week there will be an artist doing a whole lecture, and then the week after an artist doing a whole lecture, and so on and so forth. And there are some I really like. Yeah, it's fine. They're not good. There's every week there's another person. Mana is, for example, in 2 weeks, and she's really cool. I met her before. She's a really cool artist. Yeah. So that's gonna be super interesting. So on and so forth. Yeah.
Sasha, your background is terrifying.
What?
Your background is terrifying.
It's a picture I made myself some time ago, so.
Oh.
So we'll be with the spirals today.
I like terrifying things, I might add.
I know you do.
Okay. I guess we are back. While we were gone, I was thinking of, this is foreignness, but I wanted to see if anyone else wanted it. I was recently reading a pretty good, maybe a little stiff, pretty good master's thesis on the idea of the performative essay. In case anyone wants it, I can forward it to you after this. It uses a lot, it in a similar way uses a more formal, more kind of traditional Adorno, et cetera, ideas of the essay to think about how a performance could be an essay, but it can be useful for this course. So I can, I don't think I can, unless someone tells me, I don't think I can actually attach the document in the chat. I think I can only do a link. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I'll put it onto a drive and send a link next time when we deal with Netta. So speaking of performance, going back to Dana Taylor, I'm curious if any of you have read her already. She's pretty well known in performance studies. She runs the Hemispheric Institute at NYU, which is looking at performance through the Americas. So focusing on bringing Latin American performance, especially into conversation with North American performance studies. It's quite good, strong interdisciplinary department and kind of project. And she, in addition to this book, which Acts of Transfer is taken from a book called The Archive and the Repertoire. She also has a book simply called Performance, which is fantastic. That kind of gets into the fundamentals of performance studies. So just bringing up her text. And again, with this text, as with all three, I wanted to think about some kind of fundamental discussions around how to talk about these things and how to define them. So one of the main routes that Taylor takes is to consider or reconsider what Western, say, society thinks of as performance and how it looks different elsewhere, and also kind of break down what might seem like performance or just sort of informal life within even one's own society, and thinking about, along with that, thinking about how ways of knowing can come through the body, right? How embodied practice offers a way of knowing, and how performance, whether we think of it as formal or informal, let's say artificial or frivolous, or this thing that happens in a forum versus this thing that happens in the street, is a way to understand various cultures and a way to transmit and transfer the continuity of knowledge within them. So I will read a little bit from here. It's a long text, but it's quite also, I think, straightforward and gets to various kind of important points. So starting on page 3 of the PDF, performance on one level constitutes the object process of analysis and performance studies. That is, many practices and events, dance, theater, ritual, political rallies, funerals that involve theatrical, rehearsed, or conventional event-appropriate behaviors. And then later in the paragraph, to say something is a performance amounts to an ontological affirmation, though a thoroughly localized one. what one society considers a performance might be a non-event elsewhere. And then thinking about how, performance is though less traceable in a textual way, performance leaves a trace. And so later on, she says performances travel, challenging and influencing other performances, yet they are in a sense always in situ, intelligible in the framework of the immediate environment and issues surrounding them. And then she goes on to sort of talk about kind of, maybe in a similar way to Salome, talk about other previous white Western theorists of performance and the sort of limitations by which they're understanding it. And something like a three-part structure, certain kinds of plotting, certain kinds of props are setting up for certain kinds of venues, things like that, and sort of understanding it in this broader way, while still understanding these things, even if we expand where this can happen or by whom, that there's still rigor and study and transmission at the same time. So anyone wants to comment on that or this reading?
I have something like, I was thinking, I think in what you read, there was something about like the question of performance being like an ontological question. And that kind of surprises me in a way, because I feel like at least like at some point I think she briefly like goes through this tradition of philosophical inquiry about performance. It's like Austin, Derrida, Butler, right? And at least in that, at least the way I see that discussion, even like starting with Austin, I think it's in an important sense, it's about like not talking about ontology, right? It's like, let's not ask.
Wait, can you speak up a little bit, or closer to the computer?
Okay, yeah. Is this better?
Yes, so much. So you
it feels like it's about like trying to bypass the ontological question and not ask like what is this, but like what does this do, and what are the conditions for certain effects, right? So you just ask like what is done, how is it done, what does it do, and you don't ask what it is at any point. And like, of course, with like deconstruction, you even like break that down even more. Like it becomes even harder to pin down even just like those like contextual conditions for anything. So do you think there's a break there? Because at the same time, I'm quite interested by the like return of ontology in recent thoughts. So but I don't know if that's like a conscious move there, or if it's just, well, anyway, I'm not really sure. I'm not very acquainted with like performance studies in art theory. So.
I mean, I guess on the ontology question, this Diana and this text is definitely anthropologically informed, and more like ontological turn, anthropologically informed for sure. So yeah, that comes from that. I'm myself not like able to necessarily speak more from that. Other than knowing some of the sort of basic proponents, but thinking about, I know that this stuff, as somebody who has studied ethnography for a long time and the problems of it, it's completely obvious to me that this comes from sort of, and there are different parts within the text where she goes back and forth to talking about how her insights are coming from kind of pushing against anthropology having this difficulty with itself starting in the 1970s, realizing that what it was doing was, trying to sort of capture the other and then transmit it to an audience of the anthropologist's own. And that in itself was like, first of all, the idea of that being a transmission of reality was ridiculous, but second of all, it was sort of, it was you know, it was fundamentally disempowering and distributing only, you know, only kind of versions of itself. And so that she compares to, yeah, this idea of what can be defined as movement, dance, language, knowledge, and formal performance. Yeah. So I can speak to that in terms of that being her position vis-a-vis this idea of performativity, as you mentioned from, you know, the Derrida and Butler.
Hey, I'm not sure like this is like this can work as a reference for other people, but what I started thinking about when she discusses what is performance, I started thinking about another question of asking of what is technology, and it's seen from Ursula Le Guin's short text Rant About Technology, and a longer text by Matthew Piscavelli about artificial intelligence. And like for me, it is connected in a manner that acts of shamans can be sometimes seen not as they are, by the Western eye, they're often seen as performance, while by so-called indigenous communities and like by the communities for like where from which shamans can be coming from, these acts can be rather seen as technology in a manner like as a way of relating to the world. But yeah, it's kind of a random thought.
Like in terms of infrastructure or like systemic thinking, or is it?
Like I wouldn't say it's like this. It doesn't come directly from infrastructure. Rather, it comes from like more like just plain decolonial theory. And yes, it's but like if we see technology as the way of relating to the world, then we might kind of see the acts of shamans as technology. And from this perspective, thus asking what counts as performance and what counts as technology. And this distinction allows for like questioning the Western gaze maybe, but yeah, it's just really like something I was thinking about during like this conversation. Yeah,
that totally makes sense to me now, and I think it's it's very much a parallel way of thinking, right? Oh, and yeah, if you can put the name of the text in, Sasha. Yeah, also thinking about how the tools, the Western tools of record for any of these things in the first place, no matter who they're used by, are still created for Western epistemology. So they're made for the ideals of the way that we collect, the way that we do research, our sort of disciplines of research collection and art making in the first place. And so it's just kind of going back and back when so I like without redefining this determination of a performative according to something like as fundamental as a technological as well. That makes a lot of sense.
Excuse me, I don't know how to raise hand in Zoom.
I
wanted to add something to Sasha's comment. So as I know, there is another course that is being offered in New Center. I think it will start in May. It is about new epistemes. I do not exactly remember the course's title, but in the description, it says how, for example, the body and like its instincts can work as a sort of technology. I mean, how to revive like the body and, for example, the instincts and some sort of artisanal feelings. I mean, how to revive them as some sort of technology. I think that was sort of related to Sasha's comment.
Yeah, could you just throw a link to the chat to the course, because I totally missed it. And that sounds really interesting.
Okay.
So a couple other quick things that I'll flag in the text as worth focusing on is thinking about, yeah, I think in general, maybe this is more my reading of the text, but again, thinking about how I, coming from, say, like study, some art history, curatorial history, things like that, I often hear that performance studies is like a relatively new field. And so how does something like performance studies being a relatively new field then deal with practices that are as old as any kind of human socialization in the first place, right? And how does it like sort of retroactively kind of think about these things? And that for those who are working on Indigenous studies or ideas of Indigenous art or Indigenous contemporary art, I think it's kind of these sort of necessary kind of time travels and like long-term reconsiderations are kind of fundamentals of that, or a huge part of that. And I think that is also, yeah, this is also kind of part of the terms in which we're speaking about for this course, even if we're not necessarily talking about the political or social or ethnographic in itself. These kinds of different definitions or different terms of language and experience, I think end up feeding these other kind of criteria or ways of using criteria. And yeah, this is something that then she says towards the end. I'm going to go to page 15. She starts getting into these neologisms or just using words, just using the Spanish words, and then and then uses the word and then defines as these kind of key terms, but then goes on to say, in this case, I believe replacing a word with a recognizable, albeit problematic history, such as performance, with one developed in a different context, to single a profoundly different worldview would only be an act of wishful thinking, an aspiration to forgetting our shared history, power relations, and cultural domination that would not disappear even if we changed our language. So not necessarily like reclaiming is an overused word, but reasserting that no, it is still performance, and performance is all these things, rather than adding a new thing under which it is. And then below, towards the bottom of the page, talking about untranslatability and sort of the essentialness of using kind of originary terms is a necessary stumbling block that reminds us that we, whether in our various disciplines or languages or geographic locations throughout the Americas, do not simply or unproblematically understand each other. I propose that we proceed that we do not understand each other and recognize that each effort in that direction needs to work against the notion of easy access, decipherability, and translatability. The stumbling block stymies not only Spanish and Portuguese speakers faced with a foreign word, in the case of this project, but English speakers who thought that they knew what performance means. And then I'll just briefly go on page 16. By shifting the focus from written to embodied culture, from the discursive to the performatic, we need to shift our methodologies. Instead of focusing on the patterns of cultural expression in terms of texts and narratives, we might think about them as scenarios that do not reduce gestures and embodied practices to narrative description. This shift necessarily alters what academic disciplines regard as appropriate canons and might extend the traditional disciplinary boundaries to include practices previously outside their purview. So I wanted to maybe end on this piece on that note, unless anyone else wants to bring anything up. Okay, then we'll go briefly to the final piece, which is mine, and is fairly straightforward. I can tell you a bit more about it. I was invited to write something for this, just pulling it up. This set of conferences and programs at Frame in Helsinki around the idea of rehearsing hospitalities and trying to think of hospitality as an epistemic form or epistemic forms as requiring hospitality. And so I was asked to curate a program for that, and then also to write a text. And what I wanted to offer is something that would, for a more like contemporary art audience, offer some keys into things that cinema can do that maybe some of the art audience wouldn't be as familiar with or capacious about. Maybe coming from working with a lot of cinema and moving image practices, feeling like there's a lot of quite a lot of prejudices towards especially work that happens in the cinema, whether it sort of defines itself as art or not. And so I wanted to kind of make a claim for the sort of various like kind of wild things that that cinema can do. So I'm just going to put my notes. Have any of you or most of you seen any of Empire by Warhol? I'll just show you a little bit for a minute now. I think I have it. This is a great way to end. I'll just run this for a minute or two and hopefully not mess up sharing my screen. This is like a photographed version of a photographed version of a photographed version, but it still more or less looks like this. I did it right. So the basically exciting bits of this 8-hour film, which is just a full 8 hours of filming the Empire State Building. So it's not edited, just constantly reloading. The points of excitement or tension are moments where moments of flashes or disruptions or dirtying of the film or exposure, and times when basically watching the sunset. And then, as I talk about in the piece, basically the only real exciting plot moment is when the lights go on. And in this like intense durational process of becoming so kind of habituated to so little stimulation, it's like this sort of epic effect. I don't know that that's necessarily what it was supposed to be, but that was my experience of it. So that's the first example. And thinking especially about duration itself as being the operative element here. Does anyone want to say anything? Or, the next part is fairly silly, but thinking about this this sort of experimental essay by a friend called Narcolepsy Cinema, and thinking about an experience that many of us maybe have had, where you fall asleep in the theater and become an editor yourself, or of the film, or become like a contributor to the film, and maybe wake up and are in a new part of it, and you've like made a new film. So rather than taking this as an accident, he decides that that you're kind of the new filmmaker. You've made something new, and I think that's a nice way to think about. I think we often think about cinema as a finished thing. That's quite a difference between art, say like a lot of art practices and cinematic practices. Many art practices are always in process. You can show, especially say a research-based practice, you can show it in various forms. You can talk about it in various forms, but films tend to be shown when they're done, and then you have a talk about it after it's done, but it's only as a set thing. There's no, the questions are only about what it is, rather than what it sort of could have been along the way. And yeah, it's quite a I think it can be a disservice to cinema that it doesn't have that kind of process-based luxury that art does, right? And so this is kind of a way of intervening in that. And then, yeah, giving a couple of other examples, I will show one more clip, just a 30-second piece from Nazli Dinsel to give you an example of what I'm talking about here. She was one of the people who were in the program that I arranged. So just to put something to what I have described.
In the sequence, one can say that first there's object relating, then in the end, there's object use. In between relating and use is the subject's placing of the object outside the area of the subject's omnipotent control. That is,
I don't know if everyone got this, but like for me here, it wasn't really synchronized between the audio and video, like the words weren't synchronized. So I think it kind of loses
Well,
some of the
the
effect.
work is not actually synchronized also.
I mean, it is synchronized, but then like the difference is part. I had watched it before. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I have looked for it before, and yeah, like you have the correspondence, and then the correspondence kind of falls off and has a lot of different like plays. But like the way it appeared here, I couldn't really like see that effect. I don't know if everyone else had this problem, but in that case, maybe like people should afterwards like just look for it because it's quite nice.
I actually have it in full, and I can send you a link of that if you don't share it. But I put for now in the comments the short version, just the 30-second clip. Has anyone else seen her work? So I wanted to bring her in, and I can share maybe a link in full with her permission as well. But as I write in the text, she's working through various things that maybe we would are not going to associate with cinema. That she's working with texture, with sort of hand processing. The theoretical, the emotional, and so all sort of all at the same time in this like super tactile kind of visual thing. So it will help if I'll send if you watch the short link again. But just to give some sort of building examples to different kinds of referring to materiality, referring to experience on moving image work. I know a lot of you are focused on that in the first place. Of materiality has been mentioned, duration has been mentioned as kind of focus points. Any thoughts or questions on?
Yeah, it just I'm sorry in advance for name dropping.
Yep.
But yeah, what I was thinking in relation to the way you discuss this work, what came to mind is the writing of Yussi Parika, and the way he approaches materiality of media by looking at I'm sorry, but the infrastructures behind the images, behind the screens, and the way you were speaking about. I'm sorry if I'm. Yes, thank you, Andrea. I'm mispronouncing the name. The way you were talking about the work of the artist, I kind of felt that there is this interrelation, and yeah, it's just a random name drop.
Yeah, his thing of media archaeology or media archiving, right? As a practice, and I wanted to. That just reminded me. I wanted to quickly go back to just thinking about the end of Diane Taylor's text, where she talks about what's in the archive, not just on the politics of what gets chosen to be in the archive, but also the forms. So if we don't have an understanding of people playing how people played sport, or the objects they played with, or songs, and just all of these more ephemeral elements of culture that tend to evade archiving, that those could be what come together to compose a sort of cultural memory, but instead we have what we have. And so thinking about the possibilities of the archive very much outside of just not beyond power structures, but then beyond political power structures, but also media power structures, let's say, or formal power structures or priorities. We can end there for today. If no one has anything. We have to do the confusing process of signing up for presentations and responses. So we'll do that kind of quickly, and we'll say goodbye for the week. I think that the way it works mathematically, there should be, I think, at least 2 presenters and 2 responders for each day. And I'm just going to pull up the spreadsheet.
Do we have that? Like,
Do you have the spreadsheet is just me. I'm just going to be tallying. But so with like starting off, say next week with Netta, I need 2 people who would like to present and 2 people who would like to respond.
Rachel, just I think we like to ask for like the sake of like organizational. Could you maybe like just send us a link with the Google Doc, and so with that we could maybe write our names inside a Google Doc if it works for everyone. I think yeah.
I can do that, but it would be great if we can have the people who will do next week just identify themselves now, and then for the rest, everyone can sign in. But I just want to make sure we're covered for next week. But that's a good idea.
I think I haven't received some piece of information because I kind of not following presentations on what and how, and yeah, sorry.
So for those of you who are signed up for to be a part of the course or for certificates, each of you sign up for one class to give just a 10-minute presentation on the reading or watching or whatever it is that day. And then you also sign up at some point to respond to whoever it is that was doing that presentation. So since after this, the seminars will be organized differently because we'll have a guest. So the guest will give a, say, 45-minute-ish to an hour lecture, after which one of you or 2 of you will then present on not that, but on the text that they sent in advance.
And this is only for certificate students or also enrolled?
I thought it was everybody, but I'm the wrong person to ask. But there are many of you who've been in this, who've taken many courses. Maybe you're better to say. I think it's everyone, or.
Yeah, every class I've taken so far, there's always the same structure with presentations, and it's usually everyone doing them.
So yeah, it's just a 10-minute explanation, kind of run through kind of basically what I was doing with the text today, since it was the first class and we didn't have someone to do that.
I was wondering if it would be possible to sort of just have a little bit more of a chance to like look at like who's presenting each time, and then maybe just like, I mean, I can just see who I'm most interested in and like, or would be best equipped to discuss.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, except for like I can send the,
sorry to interrupt you. I can jump in for next week.
Okay, super.
I can do the reading or the presentation. I did a few courses before, so I know what I have to do.
Okay, so thank you, Lena. Yeah, so I'm happy to have everyone sign up after this for the rest of the courses, just for this coming week. I just want to get started.
I could also help out next week, even though I haven't done it before, but I've read a little bit through it, and it seems like there are things that I'm interested
in. I think this would be the one for you.
Yeah.
Sure. And I can speak with you about this separately, but I think given the way the work is, I'm gonna maybe ask each of you to present on one half of it, because it's three text parts and 3 video parts. So maybe Lena, if you could take the first 3, and Ines, you could take the second 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the way it will work, I should tell you all this now. So it's a series of 6 videos and 6 texts, and they correspond with each other. You'll know when you see the text what corresponds with what. The videos you don't need to watch in full. They're on average like 10 minutes, but Netta just asked that you watch at least a few minutes. And of course, you can watch the whole thing. But and then for those of you who present, it would be great if you watched the whole thing. Nothing is more than 30 minutes, but she said even if you just watch it while you're reading the essay, so it's kind of there because they have this nice correspondence to each other. But so that's the assignment for next week. So Lena, I'm giving you 1 to 3, and Ines 4 to 6. And can anyone respond? I think if we have at least one person and then we can have more responders for future weeks, that's fine.
Okay, I think I can respond.
Okay, thank you.
For the next week, right?
Okay, okay. So for the rest, I'll copy the Google Doc, and if you could try to sign up for everything by the coming Sunday, that would be great. But, I don't know that I think many of the materials, probably all the materials will be available by then, and talk to the organizers about if you didn't get the links or whatever. I have no idea, but I'm sorry. Any further questions before we go? Okay. Yeah.
Excuse me. Do we have any final project or anything I don't know?
My understanding is that you would just take, those of you who are doing certificate would take your presentation and expand, you can either do something separate than this, but you could take your presentation and expand it into something bigger, or you could do something separate from that, which we would talk about with me and the organizers. That's all I know.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I forgot to say when I was introducing myself, why I'm here, and mainly what I'm trying to figure out is how to produce theoretical, discourse that's not based in text, right? But I don't have, I'm not an artist, and I don't have a background in producing audiovisual material or anything like that. I'm mostly theorist and writer, and I'm looking to develop that, but I'm not sure yet whether we're going to get some tools about the practical side of that, or if there is something I could do on the side to get a basic practical setup and the vocabulary, basic set of techniques that I could use to, because I was even thinking about if you have a final project, whether it would be a visual presentation that could have some kind of inventive aspect to it. I think that would be really nice to try to do, but I would have to start a bit from scratch to figure that out. So yeah.
I mean, there will be moments that the practical comes up, and you're always welcome to ask practical questions to the artists and practitioners. But I'm guessing, a lot of this will be more, based on the ideas based on putting together ideas, arguments, sort of consolidating theory through this work. So I think it will use the practical, but I don't know if it'll be directly. Always, I think it'll be useful, but maybe not in a short. It's not the shortest way to get to practical knowledge or information, if that makes sense. But I think as far as doing a visual version for a final project, that's completely fine. I think those, as far as I understand, that's totally on the table. That's as good as an answer as I can give you, but maybe also talking to Mo would be good.
I have a question on that because I'm interested in that too, Antonio. Can we work together
with
for the final project? Is it possible to collaborate if we already have the same, similar aim or question?
For me, yes. That's fine. Yeah, for me, totally. I don't see why it would be a problem otherwise either. As long as it's a project that is clear that it comes from the work of two people, not just one. That it is sufficiently. It seems sufficient that it had two energies into it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? See you next week. Write with anything, and talk to you later. Have a good week. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Oh yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
James, see you tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it, man. Nice.
See you soon. I'm back on Zoom. Ciao.
Ciao. Bye, Jared.